the intersection of storytelling and algorithms. For centuries, stories shaped cultures. They shaped identities. They shaped how societies understood women. They shaped their journeys, their brilliance, their struggles, their triumphs. But today, stories are no longer shaped by only people, they are shaped by systems and they are shaped by algorithms, by invisible decision makers determining which narrative rise and which ones quietly disappear. In this quiet tension lies a powerful question: who gets to be seen and who gets to be heard? This panel invites us to examine not just technology but responsibility as well. Because the digital era is not just changing the way we tell stories but also changing who gets to tell them. This session is curated in partnership with On Purpose, our reputation partner for GHCI 25. On Purpose is a communication and reputation building firm that works with organizations creating meaningful social impact. Their work sits at the intersection of narrative, purpose, and public engagement, which makes them the perfect partner to help shape a conversation on storytelling, visibility, and voice in the digital era. Now, let's invite our panel moderator onto the dais, Girish Balachandran, founder and managing director On Purpose. Along with the speakers, Shalini Umachandran, editor, Mint Lounge, Kasturi Palathi, head of external communications and social media, Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages, and Priya Pathankar, head of corporate communication, PhonePe.
Okay, so we're going to start with a quick example. Imagine two people, a woman and a man, both post a 10-minute video on YouTube titled How to Negotiate Your Salary. Now, his video, the algorithm quickly categorizes it under business, career advice, and finance. It gets suggested to a wide mixed gender audience interested in professional skills. It garners steady views, likes, and comments, which signals to YouTube this is valuable content. The algorithm then promotes it further. Her video. The algorithm's training data is historically associated women's voices in negotiation with soft skills or personal stories, not core business topics. It may get categorized under women's interests or lifestyle, limiting its initial reach mostly to female viewers. Because it starts with a narrow niche, it gets fewer views and less engagement in the critical first few hours. The algorithm reads lower critical engagement as less interesting content and does not promote it to the broader business or career audience, even though the content is identical. The result: his video trends in business, hers stays in for women. The bias isn't necessarily in the code itself, but in the historical data and patterns that algorithms have learned from, patterns that reflect real-world stereotypes. Now, this creates a feedback loop where her expertise is systematically undervalued and kept from the audience who needs to hear it. So on that note, delighted to have a very interesting, very diverse set of views on this panel with Shalini from Mint, Kasturi from Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages, and Priya from PhonePe. And I've known each of them and they all excel in different ways in their own careers. And I think it'll be really interesting to hear from them about their challenges that they encounter in their work on a daily basis. So let's start with you, Shalini. Now, talking about the algorithm, from your editorial desk at Mint Lounge, you have a bird's eye view of which stories gain traction. How do you see the algorithms influencing editorial decisions? And what responsibility do you think the media have in pushing back?
So, hi. Do we write to the algorithm? No, that's the straight, direct answer. But what we do is, I mean, that was a great example of algorithmic bias that you showed us, that you narrated really, which is it it's what is fed in, that is showing you a certain output, right? It's not that it's not necessarily true that there's always a great malice in the background, but it is true that these are biases that we've had for centuries, even whether it's gender, whether it's class, whether it's caste. All of these are biases that we've had baked into society for decades, for centuries. So what we're seeing in a way is the biases that we hold. So which is why when we do stories, or we're not we never write to that algorithm, because we are to a certain extent aware of the problems that are there. And these are the kind of biases you always have to push back against in the newsroom anyway. So what we do though is present these stories in a way that still get the algorithm to push it up there and to reach all of your feeds. So we don't necessarily write a different story. We just present the story in a way which will catch your attention. And I think what's important here in this situation is to make the distinction between the content itself, which can be the story, or if you're an individual trying to post on social media, the message you want to put out. So there's a distinction between the message or your story and the platform. The platform is just your distribution channel. What you are saying should not change. That needs to be real, that needs to be authentic, that needs to be true, most importantly. But how you get it out should be tailored to each platform, should be tailored to make sure it reaches the most number of people. So I think don't mess with the message, but definitely tailor it to whatever platform you're on.
Thank you, Shalini. So, Priya, I'm going to come to you next. Now, you're at the intersection of tech and storytelling. Now, how does being in a tech-first company like PhonePe influence the narratives that you build, especially when communicating about the women who are building the tech itself?
First of all, lovely being here. I think takes me back to college, seeing so many women. So I think I'd like to divide my response into two parts really. One, of course, you're right. Tech that way is an equalizer when it comes to telling women's stories, because while there are very few women in tech, boundaries like geography stop mattering, because that's one of the reasons I notice a lot of women don't take up a lot of jobs. But with tech, that's not really a problem. I think with tech, the challenge also is that we have to go. I mean, we were having a casual chat, I know, before this, where I told you it has to go above and beyond tokenism. It cannot be only about celebrating your women engineers on a certain day, but it has to be about telling stories which show the impact of what they are doing and what they are building. So I'd also like to talk a little about the PhonePe journey, because we are finally a 9-year-old company. When we started sometime around 2020, I remember, we decided that the representation of women in tech and otherwise was very, very anemic. We just probably had a 10 or 15% workforce which were women. And for a tech company, that was glaring. And what we realized was it was across levels. At entry levels, we were not getting enough women engineers. In middle management, a lot of them would move out because of, say, marriage or maternity and not come back. And in leadership, we barely had any women. So I think it was a conscious choice to start looking at the pipeline right from the beginning, making sure we're addressing mobility, maternity, marriage at levels we could, and then having more women in leadership. And across roles, I mean, our head of compliance is a woman. At various points, we've had head of internal audit being women. So I think just making sure there are enough women leaders was one difference. Now, when it comes to the algo and the storytelling, when I talk, I'm in a communications role. When I talk about my women leaders, I actually talk about the impact they are building or what they are doing. And for me, I think the aha moment was probably last year when I was invited to curate a panel on building payments for the country, and we're one of the largest payment apps. And my head of business, head of product, head of tech, and I was moderating the panel. You just had a bunch of women sitting on stage talking about the impact payments was building. See, the only way you can beat the algo is by having more credible women voices out there and doing great work, real work. I think that is one way you can sort of start, I would say, gaming the algorithm.
So, Kasturi, you manage the narrative for a major brand. How do you leverage your platforms to tell stories that authentically represent women, both as consumers and customers, and as leaders within your organization while aligning with business objectives?
Thank you, Girish. Thank you so much for having me here, by the way. And thank you to the audience that has joined us for a very important, interesting conversation. A shout out to Jimit, who's the only guy in the room who's here to have a chat and conversation with us as well. So, Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages is a large manufacturing giant. It's the 5th largest bottler for Coca-Cola in the whole world, which means the company has operations not only in 10 plus states in the country with 14 plus plants, but also looks at sales and distribution of the world's most loved beverage and beverages brands across the country. Managing communications and ensuring that we, if not hack the algorithm, beat it, in one word, is tough. Very, very tough. But how do I do that? How do we ensure that women's voices are represented and they're being heard? And we are not only talking to customers who are, by the way, retailers and distributors who are, on an everyday basis selling cold drinks, your soft drinks to consumers. We do it by 2 ways. One is like what Priya mentioned. Our job is not always to hack the algorithm, but to ensure that enough of that content exists across platforms that we are present in. And how do you hack the algorithm? We hack it by giving it shock value. Because you know what? Like a lot of these roles that women in our organization actually do today, they are not conventionally roles that women are known to be doing at all. For example, if you would quickly search on one of these AI engines and say, okay, show me a forklift driver, or show me a distributor, or show me a retailer, trust me, you will not get images of women who are doing it because the algorithm is not seeing that kind of, historical data or that kind of information from any of the other platforms that is available, that it might even read it and give you a suggestion. So our job is to, one, talk about real, authentic human stories that exist inside our organizations. They are women who are actually doing the job. For example, in one of our factories in Gujarat, there are only 2 forklift drivers. Both of them are women. They're not men. So their stories need to come up. When we are working with, as part of our CSR programs, when we are working with women who are beneficiaries, who have, actually used the paper plate making machine or the masala making machine and have not only managed to build a stable income for their family, but have managed to grow the business multiple phones and are probably giving a lot of startups out there in the world in terms of how PAT positive they are, like a strong competition to them. It's our job to take that story out and say it. And you know what tricks the algorithm? That this information is, one, shocking. Second, BTS, which is behind the scenes of how difficult it is sometimes to put this content up front as well. We shoot that, we show that, But I'll also be realistic to tell you that a lot of times it doesn't work. You know what is interesting? External algorithms might still give us that kind of validation. But the reality of the fact that the manufacturing sector is extremely male dominated, a lot of times our internal communication emailers don't get that kind of response. So externally we are getting validated because, hey, there's shock value, hey, there is content which is so close to someone's heart, and you're seeing someone do so well, but internally you're having to go knock doors of every senior leader that exists in the company to tell them that, hey, you need to support this content, because you know what, when you supported your team, that's a big battalion of 100 odd men, they will take notice. They will understand that this is not out of the norm. This is the real, actual, the reality that exists. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we are constantly working on. Making progress a little inch by inch every day. Still miles to go, but yeah, to summarize, I think we have to dictate more of what the algorithm reads, and for that to happen, inclusion has to be intentional.
Thank you. I'm conscious there's a clock here which says 11 minutes, and we've got some very interesting people with real lived experiences. Do you have any questions that you'd like to address directly to them? Is there a mic that can be shared?
Hi, my name is Srividya Sheshadri from Amrita University. And your discussion so far has already given me a lot of really good ideas just in terms of how do we address representation of our own, employees, our own faculty, women faculty or engineers, or students who are budding engineers telling their stories. And then I realized that one thing that's probably going to stop them or challenge them from doing that is maybe they don't have the confidence to be able to tell their story. And I'm wondering whether you have any tips or resources or suggestions for how we can sort of help women build that confidence to tell their stories in a way that is, I don't want to be corny, but unbound, I guess. So
Who wants to start?
I think that's a great question. Somebody once told me I had recently been promoted, and I was in a meeting which was full of all men. And I said I struggle asking questions. So one of my male colleagues only said, all of us are not asking the best questions, just ask something. You can start with just talking about the weather, break the ice. So I think when I was younger, and I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 10 years, I was working from home. And I remember I had started blogging. And when I went back to work, a conversation started with a lot of my employers used to be my blog. And this was years back. I mean, when those were the blogspot days. But now I think there is access to a lot more platforms where you can express yourself. I'd say find your causes. Make sure you're visible and out there. And this is across levels, by the way, not just with students. I see that with a lot of my colleagues as well. We just disappear. We do our work, we work hard, and we just sort of disappear. We just don't want to talk about our works, our lives. We have interesting hobbies. Younger people are doing so much more. A lot of them actually are engineers, but they are great cooks. Some of them are, making our Instagram influencers are doing a lot more. I'd say find causes which resonate with you, start talking about it. Find a medium which works for you. I think it's a myth. People say people don't read enough. I completely disagree. I would love to read a well-written blog rather than just a reel or a post. Find mediums which work, find causes which resonate with you, stay at it, build your audience slowly and gradually, be in the social platforms which sort of matter, build your tribe. I think it's important to be seen, heard, do it consistently. So don't just stick to academics and think this is sort of going to get you where you want. That's how I would think of it.
So I'd also just add that that's if you're doing it for yourself, and those are great points, especially consistency, experiment, and really don't be afraid to experiment, because until you don't always know what's going to work for you till you experiment. But if you were, I'm thinking your question was about how do you get people in your organization to do this, right? So I think a lot of large companies are very afraid of what their employees will say because it's going to be the wrong message. But I'd say rather than just do media training or whatever we're going to call it, social media training, whatever it is, do that training for everybody who's interested. Don't just do it for the people who are, your management who's going to be facing the front facing, right? Do it for everybody. Anybody who's interested, teach them what's okay, what's not okay, how to present something, how not to present. So rather than censor, then you're sort of helping them get it across. And maybe you'll have one bad voice out of whatever, I don't know how many, 1,000 employees, 500, 100, whatever. Maybe you'll have one bad story, which you will have to then fix as the comms person. But you would have got 999 great stories out there, which are really authentic about the work that your company is doing or whatever, right? So I'd say rather than be afraid, be a little more encouraging of and help people with it, because it doesn't come naturally to everyone to go, switch on the video and talk into it. So train people, so then they also realize where they're crossing the line, where they're not, what's okay, what your company policy is. I think training people for that is a good way to do it.
My one advice, I generally take advice from content creators who are doing this for a living. So I ask them as to how do you do it? And they usually tell me, Kasturi, someone's cringe is someone's binge. So if you feel you're cringe to yourself, you will be someone else's binge. That's okay. Remind yourself of that. You taking up too much space, being too much. Of course, we have grown up in like middle class households where we are not allowed to take too much space, right? Growing up, and that reflects in so many ways of our existence, even in the corporate world. It's true. But challenging that has not ever gone badly for anyone, honestly. Your voice needs to be heard. Hey, because honestly, open one of those social media platforms and everyone would be say, I'm excited to announce, I'm happy to share. You should be too. Do it.
Anyone else? If you want to clap, clap. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I think you said that it's about telling the same story, the stories that is not currently being heard, but telling it differently, right? We've also seen that going too far in the other direction can also it can lead to the story not getting the do it deserves, or the context of it getting lost. Or for instance, an example is there's this really interesting Insta page called Life of Pooja. It's this woman in a small town who's telling her story and who's struggling, who's speaking English and all of that. But if you look at the comments on her page, a lot of it is fetishizing poverty, and which is completely different from what she's actually trying to do. So sometimes the medium can impact the crux of the story. How do you combat that, and how do you ensure that the context of what you're trying to convey actually comes through?
Let's take, I think, maybe 2 responses and then we move on.
So I think that's a great question. Every platform doesn't support the kind of stories that we would like to tell. Some stories are better told visually in a movie format, which maybe like an Instagram supports better. Professional achievements, accolades, etc. for the company as well. For us, honestly, like Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages perform better on LinkedIn. So one is, a little more it's obvious. We do A/B testing. We see which one's performing well on which platform, and we continue to push more of that kind of content on that specific platform. Also, you're right about, for example, over-indexing on women-led content can probably make it a little less, inclusive. That's definitely the case. But I honestly, this is personally, I feel we have to start somewhere. And only if I'm able to make inroads with women-led content and am able to get the audience to accept that and move forward and continue to bring in more flavor as in when like we as we continue to grow our content journey, I think we will be able to reach there. But yeah, everything comes with its own set of risks, and we know that with our content strategy as well, because it's heavily indebted on women, indented. But that's the kind of messaging, narrative, organizational goals, etc., that we are trying to anyways establish company wide. So I think it marries well, and yeah, that's it.
So I would say that yes, trolling and threats on social media are very real, and as people in the media, we get them almost every day. You get DMs, it's really terrible. I have a colleague who got 800 death threats in one day. All right, so this is not a joke. So I would say, yes, put your story out there, but always be safe. So we also have these conversations with our teams because you have to make videos, you have to do all these things, but very often we write stories which people are not happy with, right? So, but I would say safety. So yes, make sure certain data about location. I mean, these are very practical tips, but I think especially as women who are if you are going to put your story out there, and at the same time, don't be afraid to do it, but certain basic safety rules. When you get any of these threats, somebody who's following you a lot and constantly doing this, tell somebody else about it. Make sure other people in your team know you're facing things like this. Yes, don't share, don't geotag, don't share your location. These are basic things. Some of the things you would do in the real world, you have to adapt and do even online. But yeah, you should also be very careful about your own safety as well at all times. But at the same time, that hasn't stopped us from doing other things. So in the same way, it shouldn't stop you from putting your stories out there.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd like to add, sorry, half in jest is, as a payments company, do not share your payments data online ever.
All of that, exactly
Hashtag
what I mean. So all
safe
of these
payments.
basic safety things, location, payment information. I mean, there's a whole lot of. Please follow all of that. Yeah.
Because I spent half of my life educating my users on safe transactions. So I thought, shameless plug, why not?
Okay, this says time's up, but we're going to ignore it because we got 10 minutes less, right, from the previous slot. So we can take another 10 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. Thank you. Let's get a mic over to Sudha, please.
Thank you for that wonderful and insightful session. And I have my question ready. The panel that is sitting, it has experiences of collectively, everyone is like 15 plus to 20 years of experience. We are at an event which is for women who are just starting off their career, plus are also who are advanced in their career. Do you really think algorithms have kind of, do they amplify or silence the women's voice? And as an organization, as a part of an organization, what can organizations do to amplify more and more in terms of algorithms?
Very nice. Do algorithms amplify or silence women's voices?
So, like I was saying before, I don't know if we can specifically say it amplifies or suppresses. I just think that the inputs that are going into these systems have so many biases baked into. I mean, look at health data, for instance. For decades, medical research has largely been, and even the effect of medication, which is used by both men and women, the testing is done only on men, right? But so then if you're feeding that data in, any algorithm is just reading patterns and giving you an output. So I would say that we can't really say that it's what's going in, and therefore what's coming out is based on that. But I think there's one thing that an organization can do that's very policy-led, all of that. But I think each of us, whatever role you play in your organization. And it doesn't have to be that you're only a coder and therefore fixing the algorithm. You could be in marketing, you could be in sales, you could be in comms, you could be in any part of that organization. But if you're doing your job to sort of foster curiosity rather than sameness, so when you're building the algorithm, build it so that people get to see a little bit more than just what the pattern is, right? So I'm sure each of you can figure that out because you all know your own jobs better than I would. But whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whenever you're putting out some message, whatever you're putting out, try and build curiosity into it, and try not to make sure it's homogeneous, right? Like it's not being created, whatever it is you're creating, for the largest common denominator. Leave a little gap for that, someone else to sneak through as well. So I think if each of us do it at some level, then it reflects in what organizations are doing too.
Just to follow up to that, Shalini, so are we saying that women need to work harder on making their content more interesting so that it's able to get more attention?
No, so I wouldn't actually say that. So you can't game this, right? You can't make your content more interesting, because at the same time, everything's changing so much. So what you do instead is, like I was saying before, what you want to say, you stay true to that, because that's when you're authentic, or that's when you're telling the truth, right? So tell the story or send out the message, make the video, the one that you want to make. What you do is maybe have a slightly different approach when you're on, say, Instagram, slightly different on LinkedIn, slightly different. So see what works. All of us have access to analytics dashboards for our own pages, right? So you know which posts perform better. So I'm not saying do more of the same, because then you'll just keep boring. You'll be saying the same thing every day, and that's just boring. No one's going to come back anyway. But maybe there was a particular way in which you presented something. Maybe you gave more examples and that worked better for you as compared to you just reading from a script. Maybe you had a conversation with somebody in that video and that worked better. So over time, that's why I was saying experiment with the formats you're using, but don't mix up what you want to say, which is your content, with where you are putting it out, which is basically a platform or social media or whatever you're putting it on. So the two are separate. So remember what you want to say and say that in the way you want to say it. Just package it differently for each platform.
Thank you. I'm going to just one last question for Kasturi and Priya. How many people here are actually working in tech firms? Okay, so largely representative of the theme of this conference. So, Kasturi and Priya, given that we are talking to an audience that actually also has agency and power in how they build technology to sort of address these biases, what advice would you have to offer them as they go back into their jobs once this conference is done?
From what I've seen in my organization, I think especially the younger, I saw a lot of hands were young women in tech. They don't really talk much about their work. It's very hard getting the techies to come and talk about their work. Honestly, it's a job. I have to sit a lot of them down and explain to them, you have to be out there. Talk about your projects, talk about your wins. I understand for a lot of them it's occasionally also intimidating, because I've seen teams where there are like 3 women engineers and you see a room full of men and working on projects. So the bragging rights are somehow always the 97 of them and not really the 3 women in the room. I think they have to be a lot more visible and vocal. The second thing is, I think we do not, and especially I would say this is across roles, we don't network. We do not network in the org. Girls, last 2 jobs I got was because of colleagues I was working with, and not really a LinkedIn push. So you have to network externally and internally. Have those conversations, especially when you're moving up the ladder. The projects, it's not going to be what you've done, but it's the little extra which gets you that promotion. But the little extra comes when you know of projects which are outside your immediate area of comfort. And those only come because you had a conversation, you realize, hey, this is a gap. Why don't I take this up and show the initiative? Please be out there, talk about your wins, write about it. I used to have a brag diary when I was younger. I'm sorry, sounds extremely presumptuous now. But sure, I wanted to brag about my work, and if there was nobody else, I wanted to have milestones I've achieved. Sure, first car, paid my first EMI, did my first project, got the company to XYZ. So have your professional brag diary which you can talk about. I do think we are very, very inward focused. Though women employees are generally extremely hardworking, great work ethic, but you have to be a little out there. I think there's really no other way to even beat the algo. I mean, I would like to see content like that. I have a voice, I have the money, so the algo will at some point come back and satisfy what I want.
Thank you. Just any closing statements, Kasturi and Shalini?
I think I didn't bring it up in the conversations, but I'm going to go back to my personal experience and how did I end up being here? What journey was I on? Because I feel that's the most authentic story I can tell. Girish likes to say it again and again, but I was probably the youngest corporate communications head for a large technology firm at one point in time. I was 28 when I got the reins to head communications for a company like Xiaomi India. I was super underconfident. I was super scared. But I was all of that in my bathroom. I would step out and I would tell myself every single day, there is no one better who can do this job better than I can do. And I will not let any voice, no matter what it is, come in the way and tell me otherwise. Even if it was my own voice, I gave it a personality name. I called her, Masturi, and I would have a chat with her separately. But I think it's important, girls, ladies, we really have to toot our own horn. We only have ourselves to really stand for ourselves when everything else fails. So buckle up. It's really in your control and you can do it. Don't hear a no. Don't hear anything negative. Yes, please take feedback when someone tells you need to do a better job, but take it always with a pinch of salt and truly believe in yourself, because that will help you navigate through a lot of situations and a lot of self-created doubts and crises, because we all work with everyone in organizations, and honestly, all of you who are working over here, in fact, I hear this from one of the very well-known leaders. She's in US called Reshma Saujani, and she's done a lot of things in life. Look her up probably one day. She says, whoever I've met, even the President of the United States, I've had a conversation with this person and I'm like, yeah, bro, I can manage this. This is not something which is out of my reach. Nothing's out of your reach. You really, truly, however, have to believe that, okay? And say with me, repeat after me, yes, I can. Say it. 1, 2, 3. Yes. There you go. Thank you.
Closing thought from you, Shalini?
I think that was a great closing line. But yeah, so just whatever you're doing, have fun with it also. I mean, it's tell your story. Never not do that.
I'll say yes, I can. +1.
Yay! +1, yeah.
I think we'll close with that. Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you for being
everyone.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Could you please give a huge round of applause for the panel? And could you please stay on stage while I invite our track curators, Shailaja and Gomati, onto the dais to give off a sweet memento to all the panelists. Can we have all of you together for a quick photo? Thank you so much.